I think when I was in primary school, I went to white schools my whole life in the middle of the suburbs in Johannesburg, and they're predominantly white. And I think in primary school, there was a fun activity they used to call PE. And you used to have to swim in PE. And so my mom had always tried to like bridge the gap between me and like my white counterparts my whole life by, whatever extra things I might need. So I used to go to swimming lessons at a place called Little Fishes in Joburg. And so I knew how to swim, but my mom couldn't bridge some of the cultural gaps of swimming. So, when we're in the change rooms and like I need a swimming cap, and I've got like braids and they don't fit in the swimming cap and the swimming caps rip. Every week I have to buy a new swimming cap because they just keep ripping. And my white friends don't understand because they just tuck their little ponytails in and then they're like, gotta go. And now I'm late for every swimming practice because every time I'm getting changed, I have to fight with my swimming cap and I have to have another brown friend hold the bun down while I'm like trying to get the swimming cap on, and then I have to help her with hers, and it was a nightmare. And then after swimming, you're ashy and like you have to take even longer now after the swimming lesson because you are putting on lotion and the white girls are just putting on their uniforms and going back to the next class. So I think primary school had a bunch of different examples where like hair was a particular site of like difference. My primary school had hats as part of their uniform. So I always had to do hairstyles that would fit under my hat. Otherwise, I felt like a freak because there'd be like a thing sticking out over here. And when you're a young black girl and your mom does your braids or whatever, or like you go get your braids done on the weekend, like they want to, do creative and things with beads and whatever, like, make you look cute. And sometimes it's like braided into like ponytails, and yeah, that didn't work for a school that had hats. And not just the white girls I went to school with, but the teachers as well wouldn't understand, and the older prefects wouldn't understand. So now we're in chapel and you have to have your hat on, and I can't physically fit my hat all the way down because of this hairstyle that I just did on the weekend. And yeah, and then I would get in trouble for a thing that was naturally happening on my head. And even on the weekends, if someone's having a birthday party on the Saturday that my mom had like planned to do my hair, and they're like, oh, just like come afterwards. And I'm like, there is no afterwards, babes. It's a like 6-hour commitment. And even then afterwards, I'm probably like sleepy or like have a headache because it's so tight, and like, it's just a lot. And also just all the questions. I think everyone always had questions about how, last week it was, up, and now this week it's like dead straight, if I relaxed it over the weekend. And then everyone's just got these questions, and not just questions, but like they just want to reach out and be like, oh my god, it's so silky. And I think their favorite thing was that when my hair was relaxed, it wouldn't go down. So if I like did this, it would just stay like that, and they would die. Like the little white kids in my primary school loved it, and they were all my friends, and like I was going with it because I didn't know what else to do. But it was just this like miracle that like when they lift their hair and let go, it goes down. But when I lift my hair and let go, it stays up. And then they used to just play with it and just make it into a mohawk all the time, and it would be this fun adventure, and I would just sit there like at a petting zoo. Yeah. I think all the time in primary school and high school, just that marked difference of being the only one or one of the only ones, because even the colored girls didn't really have the same experience. Their hair was still most often like just close enough to the white girls' hair that they would be part of that group. So having the other white kids just have it easier with their hair. Like they don't have to do anything. I have to do all this extra effort just to have my hair feel normal. Like there's an extra 6 hours on the weekend, there's an extra hour in the morning. There's so much product that goes into it to keep it the way that it is. Products I sometimes have to bring with me to school because we've got like a particular activity that I know is going to dry my hair. I have to bring combs to swimming because once my hair dries, it doesn't look the way it did before I swam. And I can't get out of swimming even if my mom just paid like a couple $100 this weekend to do my hair, and now I'm going to mess it up by swimming. And I just felt it's easy to feel unattractive when you're not the standard, and when you're on the outside, you can't be the standard. So when the majority looks one way and you're the one, you're not the beautiful one. You automatically the ugly one because you just don't meet the standard. I think, I mean, I don't blame my mom because that's kind of the propaganda she grew up under. But I think in my household, it was always like straight hair was good hair, and the way that your hair comes out of its head wasn't, and it needed to be fixed. So there were always different treatments that we had to do, like every 2 weeks, really. And so from the time I basically had hair, my hair got relaxed, like basically every 2 weeks if I didn't have braids in, and it would burn, and you'd be sitting there for hours, and if you don't say something, and you sit too long, but then you also, if you don't say something, you sit too long, then it starts to burn your scalp and it starts to like take away some of the hair. But you also are told to like bear it out as long as you can, because the longer you sit, the straighter it'll be. And so there's this weird relationship between wanting to sit through it to have it look good, but also not sit too long, because once you wash and all your hair comes out, there's nothing you can do, it's gone. And even if your hair doesn't come out, you've got like red patches of just, and it's painful for weeks, and it doesn't ever get soothed. And so yeah, that happened all my life until I was basically in university, because then I had control over my hair. I was paying to get my hair done myself. I was the one initiating going to the hair salon, and then I was the one old enough to have the conversation with the stylist to say, this is what I want, and I'm paying for it, so I don't want anything else. So yeah, for about 18 years, my hair would go under chemical treatment, and it definitely ruined my hair. And to the point where like I feel like even my hairline will never be the same, and I don't actually know what my natural hairline is because I never got that opportunity. I was definitely affected by rules about hair in school. In primary school, obviously the school hats really became difficult because I had to mold my self-expression around the uniform, and I couldn't do a particular hairstyle because if the hat didn't fit, then I got into trouble. And yeah, so that just made primary school difficult. And then when I went to a high school that didn't have hats, when I moved, it didn't mean that I didn't have hair issues, because there are so many regulations. And I think because it's a white school, they don't understand black hair, and so their regulations are unstandardized completely. This person could be allowed to do this, and then this person can't, and like then you have to fight it on a case-by-case basis. And so I remember dyeing was a big thing in high school, like dyeing your hair. And the rule in the policy that you sign when you come into the high school was that you could dye your hair as long as it was a natural color. So you could go blonde to brown, but because those two are natural colors, but you couldn't go blue or like pink or whatever. And so the white girls would have a field day. They would go, you know, blonde this week, brunette next week, a little bit of ginger the other week. And I kind of kept it simple the whole of high school. And then for matric, our matric dance was in like March. And so I went to go get my braids done like 2 weeks before, and I got copper braids. And copper kind of looks like ginger, but that's the color on the packet is called copper. And so I got these long copper braids, and it took 2 days to do them, and it was like 1,000 rand or something. And I was really happy, and went to school for the first couple days, and it was fine. No one said anything. Then about a week or two later, like just before the matric dance, a bunch of grade 8s and 9s and 10s had copied the style. And copied the color, and then the teacher started to get angsty because it wasn't just that one kid in matric who was doing it. It was like a bunch of these kids walking around with these copper braids, and instead of them getting called in, I got called in. So I get called into the principal's office, and I get told that I got a ixnay on the thing, and I'm like, I don't understand. And they're like, but it's not in the hair policy. And then I was like, the hair policy says that you can change your hair color as long as it's a natural hair color. And they were like, yeah, but that's not your natural hair color. And they were just deciding for me what my natural hair color was, and I was just confused. And I was like, I mean, Megan Botha goes from blonde to brunette every week. And they were like, yeah, but that's, you know, a natural hair color. And then I was like, I mean, we have 3 gingers in our grade. What makes you think that ginger isn't a natural hair color? And they were like, yeah, but it's not your natural hair color. And so I went home. I think I got sent home that day. I went home and kind of had to explain to my mum why I got sent home, because I was a good kid. I'd never gotten sent home for anything. And she she also was obviously on my side, like that it was ridiculous, but she was like, you know what, you have 6 months left of the year, just take the braids out and put your head down and just get out, and then you can do whatever you want when you're out of university. And for me, it was more about the principle. It wasn't about the fact that like I had copper braids. I could have the next day I could have changed to anything and I wouldn't have like felt bad about it. It was the principle. It was that they were deciding for me what natural was in terms of color and what could and couldn't be done, and it was on a racial basis because the white girls had been doing it for years and all of a sudden we couldn't, and there was no standardization, and that was the issue that I had, is that rules didn't apply across the board. I think no one in my family really like rocks their natural hair, so I never had examples of how that can be beautiful and how that can be versatile and and how that can be valued. The only person who like rocks their natural hair is out of circumstance, and that's my gran, because she's bald and grey and bald because she's old. But everyone else always is just a revolving door of hairstyles. And so last year in June, I was just kind of sick of first of all, it was expensive, and I was just tired of having spent 20 years just changing hairstyles every like month. And so I was like, cool. I felt like the hair that was on my head was unhealthy, and so for 6 months I grew out the natural hair, and then I just chopped the relaxed bits on the end and didn't tell anyone. I was at my aunt's house, I undid my braids, and it was just my normal hair. And then on the drive home between my aunt's and my apartment, I just stopped at a hair place, and I walked in and I told them to cut it, and they cut it. And I didn't tell anyone, didn't send any pictures, and I went home the next day from varsity, and I went home like to my grand's house. And I was on a 15-hour bus ride, and the whole time I wasn't even thinking about my hair. I was just like, cool, I'm gonna go home, it's the holidays. And then I get to my grand's, and the bus kind of parks a street above my grand's. So I just walk, take all my like stuff, and I walk to my grand's house, and I walk into the kitchen, and they're all having breakfast. It's like 8:15 in the morning, and they're all having breakfast. So my gran and I think like my aunt and uncle. And I haven't seen my gran in maybe like 8 months. And I woke up and I like put my bags down, and they're like, hey, and then I hug her. And as I come out of the hug, the first thing she says is, in Xhosa, she says, "Abantu bathi akufanele," which the direct translation is, do people say that that suits you? And I'm like, hi, Makulu, how are you? It's been a long trip. I've been on the bus for 15 hours. It's like hot and sweaty and gross, but I'm here now and I haven't seen you in a while, and I've missed you, but I can go also. I can also just go because that abuse is unnecessary. And then the rest of the holiday was just more of that. Later on in the afternoon, when my aunt got off of work, my gran let me know that my aunt was home, so I went to her room and I knocked to come say hi, because that's what you do, and just to say that I'm here. And as I opened the door, and she just grabbed my hair, and then she was like, oh, you went like full Krusara, eh? And then I was like, and they're also like all very quick to like also use the K word when it comes to hair, and I guess to them it means something different, but to me it still makes me very uncomfortable. And they're just like, you're like full proper K word hair, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna exit from the situation because I've got nothing good to contribute to this conversation. I feel like natural hair is a journey and not necessarily a destination, like similar to happiness. I think it's not a thing that you have, or at least that I have. It's a thing that I'm always going to be working towards, mainly because of the society that we live in and the beauty standards that we have. And also just the unlearning. I mean, for 20 years I had a particular understanding of hair, and only in the last 2 have I started to shift that understanding. So there's a lot of unlearning to be done. So I don't think I could claim to be there already. I think I'm working towards being there. I definitely think any human should ask any human before touching them anywhere. I like, people really love, and it is a demographic thing. A lot of the time it is white people who are asking to touch brown people's hair. I worked at an Encounters Film Festival last year, March, and I was ushering at the lobby, and so I'm like taking in tickets, and this old white lady is, I guess, really early. So I'm like, I can't take your ticket in now, but if you just stand aside, I'll let you know when it starts. And she's a little bit annoyed that she has to wait. And I was like, they're still cleaning in there, so from the last film, so I can't help you, but if you can just stand aside. So she does. And while we're standing and waiting, I just feel this like tug at the back of my head. And she goes, they just get so creative. And she's talking to her friend, and she's like, they just get so creative with this thing. How long does it take, sweetie? And I'm just like, frozen. And I'm also at work, so I can't flip out and like wail the way that I'd like to. So I'm just frozen, and I'm just like, take my hair back from her, and I'm like, yeah, it takes about 4 hours, and I just have to be polite because I'm at work, and it's, you know, survival, and we're in public. And so yeah, I think people should definitely ask before touching anyone anywhere, particularly strangers. I'm a little bit more flexible if you have some kind of relationship with that person. Sort of if I like haven't seen my friend in a while and she's done something different with her hair, and I hug her and I'm like, damn girl, and I grab her hair. That's, context is also important. Or like my mom or someone I have some kind of relationship with. But I really, really don't feel comfortable with people off the street touching other people off the street. I just, in any way, like without asking. I think the natural hair movement is very important because I think it's actually bigger than hair. I think it is around hair, but hair, at least for brown people, is very political. Hair is not just hair, it's a site of politics, it's a site of negotiation with ourselves and with the outside world, really. And so I think the natural hair movement right now is very important because it comes from brown people redefining what it means to be brown, what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be valuable, what good hair means, what professional hair means, and all those different categories. So I think definitely the natural hair movement is important right now because it's so much bigger than hair. I think the best advice that I could give to a young person of color would be to own their hair, would be to define their hair. So it's not that natural hair is now the new standard, because then that's just replacing the old values with newer values, and they're still restrictive values. So I think the point is to define it for yourself. Like the title of good hair and beautiful hair and professional hair, that's for you to decide. If that is a natural fro or curly locks or straight hair or a weave, all of that is within the scope of beautiful and good and valuable, but it has to come from you. And that's the whole point, I think, of the movement, is that it has to come from you. Yeah.